Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining my class. Just give me one moment to set up my presentation and then we'll get started right away. Okay, so let me just open up my chat really quick so I can see what you guys are asking. Okay, so this is a class on freelancing for creative professionals. There's a lot of beginner stuff, a lot of ins and outs of what freelancing is and what you might not expect it to be. So I'll just start off just telling you a little bit about myself and why I'm here. Okay. And hold on. There we go. Okay, so my name's Jacoby. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am an illustrator, graphic designer, art director. I'm formerly the deputy art director for Gawker Media. And currently I'm freelancing full-time as an illustrator and designer. I've been doing it full-time for about, I would say 4 to 5 years. And I've been freelancing in general for over 12, 13 years. Some of my clients include the Washington Post, Fox, Playboy, Wall Street Journal, the New Republic, Esquire, Vice, and more. Yeah, and actually at this point, I kind of want to get to know like a little bit about you guys and see where you are in your careers. And we have a poll coming up. So if creatively, if you can launch the poll for everybody, that would be really great. We'll give you like 30 seconds to answer.
It is live.
Okay. I just want to see where you guys are at.
We can give them 10 more seconds and then I can share the results for you, Tara.
Okay, perfect.
All right, here we go.
Awesome. Okay, so it looks like most of you are either totally new or just looking to learn a little bit more about the game. And that's great because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. A lot of things I'm going to talk about wouldn't even think about until you're in it and you make a mistake or you just get put into a situation that you're not sure how to deal with. So I'll try to walk you through those kind of things. Okay.
All right, and then we have our second question as well.
And what's that?
Here we go.
Oh, the second poll. Yes, what industry are you in? I want to see like who I'm talking to.
Give them a couple more seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks pretty even across a couple different disciplines.
Yeah, okay, awesome. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is I will use references from my career as an illustrator and graphic designer and art director, but a lot of it translates through all different industries. So if I do say something specific for illustration, you can definitely use that for your career. So don't worry. So this is a little bit about what we're going to cover. The first thing we're going to go over is like, what is freelancing and is it right for me? A lot of people don't understand like the pros and cons of freelancing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to get into that a little bit. Then we'll go into how to build your portfolio and website. Then how to find work and work with clients effectively. Then organization and project management. Then we're going to dip our toes into taxes. I'm not an expert, but I've been dealing with this for years, so I'll tell you what I've learned. And then we're going to have some like tips about how to avoid burnout and stay motivated. And then we'll have a big Q&A. But also, if you have questions and you want to ask them like they're relevant to what we're talking about at the moment, you can always drop them into the Q&A tool and creatively will let me know that you have a question and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can throughout this course. Okay, so the next one. So freelance, ultimately it is freedom. It's freedom to do any job you want. It's freedom to explore your career in different avenues that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do if you were stuck at just a job that, you know, you can only advance so far in. It's financial freedom. Um, it's just you have flexible schedule. You're so free as a freelancer, and like I know that sounds cliche, but it's true, and it's an awesome job to have. So if you can do it, I definitely recommend doing it. Um, I'm going to go over, that being said, about how awesome it is. I'm going to go over some pros and cons of things that I've found that are great and also not so great about freelancing. So the first pro is that you're the boss. It's your job. You can guide your career in any direction that you want. You get to choose your path, do what you love. You get to choose who you work with. No more getting stuck next to um, I don't know, unpleasant coworkers who are annoying, or no, like getting stuck with really egotistical clients. You get to choose who you want to work with, and if you end up with a client that, you know, it's not working, you can always break it off with them nicely. So this is like definite freedom for you. The next is that there is control over, you have control over your workload. You get to say what you do and when you do it. So that's another great part of freelancing. The other part is flexibility. You know, you work for yourself. You can get a deadline done and then go out and do an errand or do your laundry while you're doing something else. And there's just a lot of flexibility with freelancing. Um, the other part is you can work from anywhere. Most of us, like I know that I have to be at my desk to do a huge illustration, but I can go and bring my iPad with me somewhere, and I can go travel if I wanted to, and I can make it work. So the thing is that you can get up and you can go to a coffee house, or you can travel for a month in Europe or something and still get your work done. That's great. The other thing is any money you make, it goes straight back into you and your business. So aside from the taxes, but all of that is yours. It's not going into somebody else's business. So you're not making money for somebody else. You're making money for you. The cons, though, is you're the boss. So you have to do literally everything. You're going to have to do things that you don't even realize you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do all the project management. You're going to have to do the accounting. You're going to have to do, let's see, pretty much everything. You're going to have to do find your own jobs, do your own social and your marketing and all this kind of stuff. You're going to have to do your website and update that. You could always get people to, like, pay people to do some of those things for you, but in the beginning you're going to have to do it all yourself. So you need to find time for everything. The next con is the estimated quarterly taxes. So every check you get, you're going to have to figure out like how much you should put aside for taxes. And you need to remember to do it quarterly. Otherwise, you're going to get a fine. And I've been there. I've gotten that fine. It's not nice. So definitely that's something you have to watch out for. The other thing about it is that you don't have health insurance or employee benefits. So you have to provide that for yourself, and you need to make enough money to cover that. Another con is you have to constantly hustle 24/7. You're constantly working, and sometimes it can get hard to delineate between like personal time and work time, and you need to kind of find a balance there. It's unpredictable. You don't know when your next job is coming in. So that's another thing you need to be okay with. The other is there's no guaranteed payday. You can have all of your invoices out, and maybe you have a good client that pays you within a couple of weeks or a month, and then you have the one that pays you every 2 months or 3 months, and then after 3 months you might have to chase people down. So that's something you have to like stay on top of and be aware of. And lastly, the other thing is it's lonely. You're working by yourself. So you keep that in mind. Be like aware that you're going to be by yourself a lot. Maybe you go work at a co-working space after COVID is done, hopefully. Like find ways, like a Slack channel with some other creatives, find ways to like stave off that loneliness. So those are some pros and cons. And here I've listed the many forms of freelance. I've done every one of these, and you can float between all three of them if you want to. I actually started off moonlighting. I was working a full-time job for 7 years at the Society of Illustrators as their graphic designer, and I would start building my client base then, and I would work at night. Any extra money that came in was like kind of like being put away for me to eventually go freelance, or put in my savings, things like that, or just going out and having fun. But moonlighting, there's security of a full-time job, so you get those benefits, you get health insurance, somebody's contributing to your 401k. It's awesome. And then everything else you do, you get to pick and choose like who you want to work with, what jobs you actually want to take, because you have very limited time to do it. And you can gradually build your client base. So I recommend this for anybody who is starting off freelancing, especially like you're saving money with moonlighting. So you can put away at least 3 months worth of rent and like bills and stuff like that. Have that in your back pocket at least 3 months before you jump into anything further. And then you could work part-time. So you can get a reliable part-time job. So you have that constant income coming in every 2 weeks. But then you have to make up the difference with your freelance career. The downside of this is there's no health insurance or benefits, so you have to factor that in, and you'll need some consistent client work. Then next is full-time, which is what I'm doing now. And basically your own boss. We already covered that. No health insurance or benefits, so you got to figure that out, and you have to hustle all the time. So you're just going to kind of be tired probably. So the next part is just a quick checklist, like personal inventory for you. Is freelance right for me? These are some questions you should ask yourself before jumping in. And remind yourself that you can jump in any stage, whether it's moonlighting, part-time, or full-time. So some of these questions are, am I passionate about what I do? You need to be motivated. If you're not motivated, it's not going to go well. Am I willing to hustle for it? Again, you need to work really hard, because you're doing more than just one job. The other is, can I adapt easily? Am I motivated by personal development? Adapting is so important in a creative career. I have seen people who just refuse, they're stuck in their ways, refuse to adapt, refuse to learn new skills in their field, and their career suffered for it. So I encourage you to start, this class is a great step, but taking classes and lectures and doing workshops and like anything like that, going to events and stuff like that and meeting new people, like you want to grow constantly in your career. The next one is, am I good with money? And I can honestly say I am not good with money, so I am willing to learn. So I read books on it. I like constantly am asking around. I have an accountant. It's something that I'm well aware of, and you need to be aware of too. If you're not great with money, you need to figure out a way to do it, because otherwise your career is not going to last. You're going to be broke. Next, am I good with people? This whole thing is customer service. You're providing a service to people, your clients. An editor, an art director, whoever you're talking to, they want to work with somebody who is pleasant, who is easy to work with, and who's reliable. So you need to know that that is a huge part of this. They will not work with you again if you are grumpy and fight them on things. So just be personable and sincere, and it will go well, and you will have clients that keep coming back to you. The next is, am I willing to put myself out there? Again, you have to do all of your marketing. It's also very like creative outlooks are, it's kind of personal to a lot of us, our writing, our art. It can seem like really daunting to have to put it out there constantly and feel judged all the time. And you need to do it. You have to put yourself out on social media. You have to actually actively go for jobs. You just got to keep doing it. So if you're willing to put yourself out there, that's a great step. The next is, am I good at time management? Time management is key to this because you are not usually just doing one project at once. You are doing multiple projects, and you're also factoring in like a day for doing your accounting, times to do your invoicing, times to fit in personal work, all of this kind of stuff. For regular assignments, you probably have more than one deadline, right? You probably have sketches or drafts due first, and then you have to do your final. So you need to make sure all of this is getting done in time. The next is, can I handle an inconsistent workflow and money flow? That's a big one. If it stresses you out not to know when your next job is coming or when that next paycheck is going to drop, it might not be a good career choice for you. I mean, it stresses me out, but I do things to prepare for this, like save. I put things aside. I put taxes aside. I save just in case for a rainy day. Like an example, when COVID hit, I was really busy right before that, and then work tapered off. For the entire summer, I barely had any work, but luckily I had savings. So I was just doing personal work and taking some time for myself and living off of my savings. And then in September, everybody figured out this is the new normal, and they got their budgets back, and I had consistent work since then. So you need to know that it ebbs and flows. It's unpredictable, and you have to have a safety net for that. And the last one is, do I like being by, oh, I phrased that wrong. Sorry for the typo. Do you like being by yourself? You have to like being by yourself because you're by yourself all the time. Not to say you're going to always be by yourself. I'm sure like there are ways that you are going to end up meeting up with other creatives. Like I had before all of this happened, I had a group of writers that I would go out and meet at a coffee shop, and we would talk and have lunch and do our work. So there are ways around it. So I would definitely look at this and just take a mental checklist and see, like, is this the right path? Are there any questions so far before we start going into building your portfolio?
Hey, Tara. Some questions that we've had so far we'll probably touch on a little bit later, but if you'd like to give a sneak peek of a response. We've had a question from Claudia about, do you recommend any good resources for tax or money management, such as companies, books, or websites?
Yeah, so first of all, the first thing you should do is get an accountant, somebody who's well-versed in dealing with freelancers, who knows what to write off, because you can, as a freelancer, you can write off a lot of stuff. Any expenses relating to, like, if your studio is in your house, you can probably say it's like one room out of 3 rooms in your house. So you can write off a third of your rent and a third of your utilities and all of that kind of stuff. You need to find somebody who's really good with that. But the other thing you can do, what I do, I have QuickBooks. So QuickBooks or FreshBooks, something like that. That I think you can even do invoicing with them, but I prefer to do my own invoicing and keep track of it in a separate file. So those two work really well for, you can scan in your receipts and just make sure you're keeping up with that, so you don't have like a drawer of receipts at the end of the year. Let's see. There's also a book that I've been reading that's been really helpful and that my friend recommended. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I forget who the author is. Rami Sethi. That book is incredible, and that'll help you with like budgeting and things like that. But I definitely recommend QuickBooks for sure, because that's the one I'm using. Any other questions?
We have a few more, but I know that they're going to be answered in a little bit, and we
Okay.
can elaborate later, so we can keep moving. But Kelsey Link wanted to let you know that she also agrees that Ramit Sethi is the best.
Yeah, it's so good. Like his book, I can't, like, it gives me it gives me good anxiety when I go to bed at night. So I'm like just thinking about all the things I could do to make my money make more money. Anyway, we're going to go on to building your portfolio. And these are just some tips and things that I picked up from both sides of being the person who has to have a good portfolio and has to get it out there, and also being the person looking at other people's portfolios. So I'll just give you a few tips here. The first one I want to talk about is making work that will get you the jobs that you want. So you want to think about, really, before you dive into this, like, what jobs do you want? I ended up in the editorial world, and that's because I was doing a lot of editorial work at Gawker Media and at vocative.com. So I just kind of got in that little market. Now, something I want to do is get into patterns and textiles, but I don't have any of that on my website, right? So that's something I'm building up on the side so that I can put it on my site and show art directors that I can do this thing, because what they see is what they're going to ask you for. And that's it. So you want to make sure, even if you don't have any like paid jobs yet, I tell this to my students all the time, make work. Like, you want to be an editorial illustrator? Okay, cool. So how are you going to do that? Go to the headlines, go to the New York Times, go to the Washington Post, pull something out that's recent and do your own illustration for it. Make work that's relevant, that will work for the jobs that you want. And it doesn't need to come from a client. You can make it yourself. So that's number one. Number two is limit it to only your best work. Don't put everything you've ever done, including student work, on your website. Sure, if you have some great stuff from your senior thesis or something like that, of course, put it on there. But you want to limit it to your best work and try to keep it kind of recent. And also do, I would say, 12 to 20 pieces. But you can have multiple sections on your website for different types of work. So then you could do 12 to 20 for editorial and 12 to 20 for surface design. So that's another option for you. The next one is choose a website platform that makes your life easy and update often. I've used Squarespace and I've used Wix. I currently use Wix. I know a lot of people that love Squarespace. I hear a lot of great things from it, but for me, it was like a couple extra steps that were too much, and it was like pulling teeth to get me update my website. So I switched to something slightly easier, that it was easy to tailor to my style, and I, it just makes my life a little easier, and I update my profile, my portfolio more, so it's constantly there. So anybody that's looking at my site is seeing new stuff. Not recently, but usually. The next is create a website that lets the work speak for itself. You don't need all these bells and whistles on your website unless you're a web designer. Other than that, I feel like it's gratuitous and it's just taking away from your work. So make sure it's simple and clean. You can still have stuff on there that is very much you and your brand, but you want your work to stand out and nothing else. I have had people send me their websites and they're like just starting out and ask my advice. And like there will be like an animated black like background with stars and fireworks and stuff, and I'm like, I can't even look at this website. It's too much. It's taking away from everything. So just keep it simple. The next is make it easy to navigate. You want future clients to be able to find things easily. You want your images to load fast so that they're not getting bored and moving on to the next person who has an easier website to handle. You again list, like if you have two different types of styles or something, list them in separate things. Make sure there's an about or a contact information page that's easy to grab your email off of there. I've seen so many times forms, which I'm sure forms are great and like you can email straight from the website, but I prefer to copy and paste their email, put it in my like Rolodex, my digital Rolodex, or like just put it in my email and write from my own personal email. So I would say make your contact information like very obvious, like very easy to get to. And if you want to even put your phone number on there, I've had art directors call me because some of them, like New York Times or somebody like that, they want to get a hold of you really quick. So sometimes it helps to have your phone on there, and always have it in your email too. Like always have all of that stuff as your signature in your email. The next one is check to see if it looks good on all platforms. Nowadays, not everybody's on their computer. So we're on our cell phones, we're on our iPads. Just make sure you have a platform that helps you transition between those things. Like, again, Squarespace and Wix are great at that. Then you need to establish a social media presence. It's so important. I can't stress it enough. And it's something I've had to get used to, and I'm still kind of figuring out, because it's like I'm like the first generation of Instagram, and I don't know how to get like 1,000 followers. But having your stuff on there, it will lead to jobs. So it's good to have your work there. I've gotten jobs off of Instagram. I actually have a great reoccurring client that found me on Instagram. It's wonderful. The next thing I would recommend is, once you get all of this work together and you've got your site up and all this stuff, start branching out to other portfolio sites like a Creatively, or like Working Not Working, or Behance, or I don't know, maybe an industry specific site that you know of. If anybody knows of any, you should definitely put them in the chat. Like I think Hire an Illustrator is one of them, but I only know the illustration ones. So I would definitely, if any of you guys know any industry specific portfolio sites, drop them in for everybody to see. I think that would be really great. But definitely sign up for Creatively, because I feel like it's unique and there's always job postings and people looking to collaborate. So it's just a cool site to be on. Okay, so I'm gonna pause. Do we have any other questions regarding this?
Yes, we had a question from Keisha, and she asked, how much has social media been a part of gaining clients for you?
I would say it's been pretty, I I don't know. I can't really gauge it, but I usually, whenever I get a new client, I pretty much ask them where they saw my work, and I think that's definitely a practice you should get used to doing. And I've gotten quite a few jobs off of Instagram. People just saw my work there. Maybe they started following me because somebody tagged me in something. I don't know, but it's definitely huge. It's a huge opportunity, especially stuff like Instagram, because it's so visual. So people are going there to see this. They'll look at the hashtags illustration and follow people. Art directors are like, I will follow them or they'll follow me. Like, we'll follow each other back a lot, and sometimes jobs come from that. So I definitely recommend it. And keeping your Instagram separate is highly recommended. So like, have a personal one, but also have your job one. You don't want to be giving up like TMI to like people who might possibly hire you. You want to be as professional as possible while still having your like personality come through. You can still be fun on your professional site, but I think that it's important to separate those things.
Another question we received is from Kavita, and they asked, if you have your own website and post on additional creative portfolio sites, should you upload the same work or use the external portfolio site to showcase more recent work?
You can mix it up for sure. I don't think there's any set rule on it. I think the main point is to just get your work in as many like places as possible, because different like art directors or clients that are looking for a creative people, they all have their preferred site to look at. If it's not just your site, they might not know your site. So maybe they just check like Hire an Illustrator. When I was starting out, I was on there and I got a ton of jobs on there because it was just like so easy for people to be like, how do I find an illustrator in Google? And then Hire an Illustrator pops up. So they just go straight to there. Like, there's so many different avenues to find your work. But I don't know that you have to put the same work, as long as it's still really good work and a work you want to do. Go for it. You can mix it up.
And our last question on this segment is from Pierre. He asked, how do you know what is your best work? Because people attach themselves to almost all of their work.
Um, well, what I would do is ask some people that you trust, like people who have a good eye, people in the industry that you know, people who are also doing the same thing that you're doing. It's good to just like bounce off of other people and just catch a vibe from people and see what they think. Um, I know I have a hard time figuring out what my best work is. I know like a lot of people like one thing and I'm like, oh, I hate that. But then I'll go back to it a year later and be like, oh no, that was actually kind of good. So sometimes it also just takes stepping away from your work for a minute and then looking at it with fresh eyes. There's no like real way to do it, but I would definitely like I always ask my friends that are in the industry and see what they think. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Amazing.
Okay, great. So the next part is knowing your worth. So there are a few things here that I want to cover. The first one is imposter syndrome, and this is something that a lot of creative people feel and like don't always express, but you're in this creative field and now you're getting paid for it, right? But there are all these other people who are also doing the same thing you're doing, and you're comparing yourself to them and their careers and their trajectories. And that is one thing that you should stop doing. I know it's hard, but comparing yourself to other people's careers is just impossible. Everybody's on their own path. Your work is personal to you. Like you need to let that go for sure and just have confidence in your work. That's how you're going to get jobs. Putting yourself out there, having confidence in stuff you do, enjoying what you're doing, and constantly growing. And also remind yourself, like if somebody's coming to hire you for a job, they're doing it for a reason because you're good and they like what you do. So always remind yourself that that is 100% the truth. And this is just something everybody kind of goes through, especially in a creative field. The next one is knowing the industry rates. Don't be that person. And that person is the person who will take any job at any cost just to get a job. And when you're doing that and you're taking these low jobs for almost no money, you're lowering the industry costs, the industry rates for everybody else. So you need to keep that in mind. So what you should do is take a beat once you get that email. Say it's like ridiculously low price, take a beat. Don't just be like, oh, it's for so-and-so, I'm going to do it because that'd be great for my portfolio. Don't do that. Take a beat, ask around. There are other people out there who are a little bit more senior than you who will know these rates and would be happy to help you out and guide you. I've had so many people just like I've asked so many people like, hey, what do you think about this editorial job for this? Here's where they want to use it or whatever. Just ask around. Somebody will help you. And if not, look it up. You can just type into Google industry rates for blah, 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 and it should come up. There's tons of resources out there for that. And the Graphics Artist Guild, which I should have taken out that typo, that is another one that comes out every year. It has the updated industry rates, like contracts and stuff like that. It's definitely a good resource to have. You'd also like call up like some of these industry specific organizations and see if they have anybody on staff who could help you figure it out. There's so many resources for everybody out there. The next thing about knowing the rates and stuff is also knowing to charge for additional work. Say you did a job, you did exactly what they wanted, they loved it, and you invoice them and all this stuff, and then they come back. This literally just happened to me. I did something for print, and it was designed around typography and all this stuff, and they loved it. My invoice was out, and 2 weeks later, I get an email saying, hey, actually, can you do it in 16:9 ratio for web. So I had to rework the whole illustration. And I said, oh, absolutely. It's going to take about 3 hours. Can you pay me an extra X amount of dollars? And they were like, yeah, of course, because they know that your time is worth money. So know that you should always charge for additional work outside of your contract.
Hey, Tara, we had
Yeah.
a question that is somewhat in line with this.
Mhm.
Kim asked, in terms of charging clients, do you normally ask for 50% upfront, or what policy do you find works best?
Okay, that's a good one. So when I'm working with a client I haven't worked with before, who is not an established institution, such as like the Washington Post or like a big magazine or something like that, it usually, if it's like an individual or small company, I'll always ask for half up front. And that's just, giving yourself a safety net because you don't know what's going to happen. Um, but when it's a bigger company, who like a legacy company or somebody more established, that you could trust, usually they'll have it in the contract where, this is your rate and you'll get this at the end. But if you're nervous, you can probably work it into your contract where you get half upfront, but those big companies probably won't do it. But yeah, that's a great question. And definitely if you're not sure about a client, I would ask for money up front.
Another question as well. This is from Mia. She's young and is a new freelancer, so she's pretty new to the game. She asked if you can explain briefly what a tax write-off is.
Okay. I'm going to get to it a little bit more, but I can really quick do it. A tax write-off is something that you use for your work. So I'll just give you an example of things that I've written off in the past. Since I work from home, my studio is in my house, and it is about a third of my house. I don't have a huge house. I can write off a third of my rent. I can write off a third of my energy bill, my internet, my cell phone bill, all of that. I can also write off the desks that I bought for my studio, the chair that you buy for your studio, the computer. I can write off my Adobe subscription. I can write off lamps in my studio. You can literally write off anything that you use for work. You can write off if you have a meeting with a client and you pay for it, you can write that off. And what the write-off means is that you're collecting all of these receipts, and then when you go to do your taxes, you don't get taxed for that because you used it for your business. So it's really important to keep track of these things. And I'm going to go into it more in depth in a couple slides. So, but I think I hope that answered it so far, but we're going to talk about it more.
Thank you.
Okay. So more about knowing your worth is the age-old question of, should I work for free? Just because you're freelance does not mean you should work for free. And just because you're creative does not mean you should work for free. So the first thing that you're going to hear, especially starting out, is, hey, we're this big company and you're going to get a lot of exposure for this job, but we have little to no money, but it'll be totally worth it for your portfolio. No, don't do it. Absolutely do not do that. Never. I will say 100% never do that. The next one you're going to hear a lot, one that I didn't understand when I first started, was spec work. And I actually learned about this the hard way because I did spec work for a company. Spec work is an absolute no. That is a company or an agency who is hiring for a company coming to you and saying, hey, we have this really awesome project for this huge client, but we're going to need you to do some initial ideation and sketches and maybe even one final, and they're going to sweet talk you into doing work, and then they're going to say, well, if you get the job, then we'll pay you. So you never want to work for free like that. Your ideas, your time, your work, it's all worth money. So never do spec work. The next one is pro bono for charity or nonprofits. I think this is great. If you're passionate about something, you are part of an organization that you just want to help out and donate your talents and your time, that's wonderful. You can do it, but set some boundaries first because it could go either way. Especially when you're doing pro bono work, you want to have a little bit more creative freedom. You don't want somebody micromanaging you, especially someone who's not an artist. You're doing this out of the kindness of your heart for them. So you need to kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this poster for you. Just an example. I'll send you some sketches. I will do one revision, and then I will give you the final, and that is it. You need to actually like put that in writing. So I would definitely say yes to any of that. Just make sure there's some boundaries. Any questions there?
Another question that was asked is by Kristen. She wants to know if you typically charge hourly or per project, and what are the benefits of one route or the other?
I usually do project rates because I have project rates are just better, especially if like you're an editorial and things like that. You can end up screwing yourself with hourly rates, but it's really hard. It depends on the profession you're in, for sure. I know writers do a lot of project rates or like word rates. For illustrators, it's typically project rates. It's usually project based. Graphic designers, it's a lot of hourly. So you have to figure out when you're doing hourly, you have to figure out, okay, how many billable hours do I have in a year? It's like a whole thing. You have to really go in and like do a lot of math and figure out how many hours do you actually have that you're able to bill in a year, and then break it down, and then break down your expenses and your health insurance and all that and factor it in. And it's math beyond like what I'm capable of doing right now. But there's definitely ways, there's formulas for it online, and I definitely recommend knowing your hourly rate and figuring it out just in case this happens. But if you're in an illustration field, it's usually a project rate. Graphic design is where it gets like tricky, in web design and stuff like that. That's when you're probably doing a project for hours and hours and keeping track of your time. Did that help?
I think that's great.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go on to the next slide really quick. This one is about finding clients. So number one is do your research. You have to do your research in order to find clients. They're not just going to fall in your lap. So the first thing you need to do is make a list. And you start with your dream clients and go from there. Then you look for other companies that would benefit from what you offer. You search mastheads and online and printed publications. So usually the masthead has everybody that works there. So the editor, art director, designer, whoever you're trying to get in touch with will be on that list. And usually their email is on that list as well. So that's a great start. I had a lot of teachers that recommended, going to Barnes and Nobles and sitting on the ground and going through everything. That you can still do, but you can do most of this online. The next is search Twitter and Instagram. You can discover new clients through other professionals. Other people are constantly posting their new jobs, name dropping their clients and all this kind of stuff. And you can kind of get a feel for like what these clients, like what their vibe is and all this stuff. And if it works for you, you can go into you can look for their emails and their bios. A lot of people just always put their email in their bio. You can follow them. If it's not their personal, like private account, I would say follow them. They'll usually follow you back and you can get to know people that way. But when you're finding all these emails, only put work emails on your list. Never email someone's personal email. You need to have boundaries, and they're not going to be happy about it. Or if they see it, they're probably just going to delete it. You need to have professional boundaries and make sure that you're getting their work emails. The next thing that you could do is you could buy a list. There are list services out there. I've only used one, and that's Agency Access. It's great because you can choose if you want to do North America and Canada, or if you want to do North America, Canada, and Europe, or whatever you want to do. It's like there's different prices for as many lists that you buy. And within these lists are advertising companies, they are agencies, they're newspapers and magazines and books and surface design, like people, like there are so many different clients, and you will have to do a lot of sifting through these and making your own lists and they will give you their emails, their mailing address, all this kind of stuff. It's great. And every time I've done it, they pay for themselves after 1 or 2 jobs. But the one thing I will say is that you should never share your list, because if you do, they have little sleeper agent emails that are in there specifically for you, and they will catch you if somebody else uses them, and they will blacklist you forever. And I know somebody who that has happened to, so be very careful. Another place to find clients is creatively, because again, there's a lot of different people on there trying to look to collaborate, and there's always constantly job postings. I get emails from creatively, like, I don't know, every week, or like at least 2 times a week, with new jobs that are available. So that's another thing you can do there. Any questions about finding clients?
Nope. That is it for now. I think we can get into some of the other stuff a little bit later.
Okay, cool. The next one is emailing clients. Cold emails are my favorite, even though it doesn't sound so fun. Basically, cold emails are just like personally taking the time to email each person at this company, at whatever company you want to work for. So you really have to go through your list and pick out the people who best suit you, and you best suit them. So they take more time, but they're more personal, they're more sincere. I would recommend keeping it short, being very genuine, being knowledgeable about the client. Don't ask for work, offer your services. Your work adds value, and that's what you want to get across to them. You're never asking for work. It's not good to come across that way. And then have a link to your site in there and 1 image max, and send it off. There's another thing you could do, which is you could do automated email services. So you can do this for newsletters or mass mailings. So say you really curated a list from Agency Access or wherever, and you have it all queued up, and you just put it into something like MailChimp or something like that. And it just, all these people are now on your mailing list, and you can send that off like every 3 to 4-ish months, just, to check in with new work and stuff like that. I don't love automated emailing services, but that is because I had a terrible experience with them. I tried something that I'm going to tell you not to use, and it's yet another mail merge. It's an add-on in the Google Chrome app. You have to pay for it. So they claim to be like this automated emailing service, and they got me blocked as spam in the Washington Post server. So now every time I work with them, and they're a regular client of mine, they email me either on my personal now because they know, or they email me and then I have to go into my personal and say, hey, it's me. I can't email you from my professional account. So don't use that. Use things that are reliable, like MailChimp. And lastly, not hearing back isn't a rejection. All not hearing back means is that those people are busy. It doesn't mean they didn't see your email. It doesn't mean you're rejected. They don't like your stuff. Most of the time, an art director will see your work. If they like it, they'll bookmark you, and then they'll contact you in a month or 6 months or a year when a project comes up that suits you. So they haven't forgotten about you. They don't hate your work. It's not a rejection. It's just them being busy and having a lot to do. So how about now? Any emailing questions?
Yes, we have a couple. One is from Anna. She wants to know, how do you disconnect with a client? Say you worked with them once or twice and they were really difficult or didn't pay. Is there any advice there?
Yeah, I literally had to just do this. And it's always tricky to break up with a client, but it's important for you and your mental health to do it if it's not working out. You just kind of kindly explain to them, like, it's sort of like a "it's not you, it's me" thing. But it's just like, hey, for I don't know, like my email was, hey, for personal reasons, I can't continue on this project. I think it would be best, it would be beneficial for someone else to come on who can dedicate more time and resources to this project. Like things like that. You just kind of like offer a solution. Like I offered to look at the other animators' work and give them feedback if they needed to. Like you just say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And it's because I want you to have the best stuff that you can have. It's always, it's not you, it's me. And then offer a solution at the end if you can, and say, you know, it's been great working with you, da da da. And they emailed me back and they said, oh, absolutely, we totally understand. It's been so great working with you. I hope that we can work together in the future. So I broke up with them and they still want to work with me. So it's just finding the words to finesse like a really nice, amicable, like goodbye between a client and yourself.
Another question we received is from Kelsey.
Mhm.
She asked about how you would communicate that you're raising your rates. For example, she worked as a freelance makeup artist for a while and has had several reoccurring clients. How and when do you recommend letting them know that she is ready to raise her rates?
I would say if they're a regular client and they're coming back, I would just, next time they come and say something to you, just say, oh, I would love to work with you on this. I just want to let you know that I've raised my rates a bit, and please let me know if this works for you. If not, we can try to figure something out. I'm always like very much like opening a conversation, not just leaving it as like, here are my new rates, that's it. Especially if they're a good client and they keep coming back and they give you a lot of work, there's definitely wiggle room between the high rate and then the old rate. You can probably find a nice rate in between as well. But don't offer that up front. Just say, here are my new rates, open to talk about it, and that's it. They should appreciate that and understand that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Are there any others?
Yes, we have a question about, and we've actually received a few about this, but how long did it take for you to, until you got to a point where you were comfortable being freelance full time or profitable?
Oh, okay. So I mean, everybody's journey is different. Like I said before, sometimes it takes people years. Sometimes right out of the bat, right out of school, people are just like superstars. You know, it really just depends on your situation. Um, your situation financially too is a big one. So for me, I worked for 7 years as a graphic designer and moonlighted, and then I went on to Gawker Media. So from there, I was still freelancing and still building a client base. And then I was working at another company for 2 years and building my client base still. And then we all got laid off because they shuttered. So I just took that as like a sign, and I had money saved up. And then I took that as like, okay, this is my time. I'm going to do it. So just, I think having money saved up is like when you should be comfortable doing it. And like knowing that you're taking a chance, but you can always go back to a full-time job if you want. Or you could do part-time jobs. Like I teach sometimes. There are many ways around it. Oh, okay, so I think we're starting to run out of time a little bit, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. And no, I can't do it. Okay, so the next one is working with clients. The first big rule is clear communication. So you want to think about budget. You want to know what that is. You want to know what all your specs are. You want to know what your deadlines are. And like I said before, there are multiple deadlines, not just one. There's like preliminary deadlines, final deadlines. You need to know all of that. The next is your contract. You have to have a contract. You have to know what's in it. So read it. You can negotiate until it works for you. They will not fight you on this. There's usually a legal team that handles all of this stuff. You can negotiate. Things to look out for in your contract are work for hire. Work for hire is frowned upon because work for hire means that you are giving up all your rights to your work. They now own it, can use it in perpetuity forever and ever and ever and ever, and you can't use it at all. So when work for hire comes up, I would say definitely try to negotiate that off the table, especially if you're like an editorial or something like that, because that means that you're getting paid an editorial rate for something where they're buying you out. So you want to get more money if that's the case. If they don't want to work around work for hire, ask for more money. The other thing is a kill fee. You have to think about having a kill fee in your contract. A kill fee is there to protect you because a lot of times projects will get killed, either whether it's after you've gotten your sketches approved or after you've done the whole thing. So if it's halfway through the project, they'll pay you for half. If it's after the project and then it gets killed, you get paid for the whole thing. So you need to have that in your corner as well. The other is the revisions clause. Your time is money, so you have to make sure that you have so many revisions factored into your contract. I usually do a round of 2. The next one is do good work and be easy to work with. So be pleasant and take good feedback. Know when to stand up for your ideas, though. So you can always walk them through your thought process. Explain why you came to that conclusion and why you think this is the best route. Keep it positive and professional. It's not personal. They'll usually respect you for it. And I've done this with clients and they've gone with my idea after all, but it's not the end of the world if they still want to go with their idea. So, it's in the end, they're paying you to do something for them. So you're going to have to bend to them a little bit. The next is deliver work that meets or exceeds their expectations. Never surprise a client. So if they approve sketches or approve an idea for a story or whatever, you want to make sure that you're not delivering them something wildly off the charts different, because they're not going to hire you again. Lastly, meet your deadlines. Deadlines are so important. And if you miss your deadlines, you're screwing them over and they're not going to work with you again. Next, what I want to cover.
Sorry, Tara, quick interjection because we had a couple questions that were relevant here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just pulling it up. Do you work internationally? And if so, does your rates change differently as you compared to the US?
I do, and they usually don't. Like I've been working with Germany a lot lately, and like the Vice Germany, and I just do like I make sure I figure out exactly what it's going to be. So I go to Google and I'm like, whatever, just figure out the exchange rate, and usually it's about the same. So, and you can always negotiate higher if it's lower than what you expect. So I find that helpful, just figuring out your exchange rate.
Another question we received is from Courtney, and she's wondering if you have a particular go-to resource to help write a contract initially, especially as you're starting out.
I don't have a go-to, but what I would say is your best bet is probably something along the lines of the Graphic Artists Guild. There are definitely contracts out there, like boilerplate ones that you can Google. But the Graphic Artists Guild is more in favor of the artists. So if that's your profession, I would say go with that one.
Amazing. And then another question here is, do you have a lawyer as a freelancer? For example, if someone were to stop paying or just to kind of go MIA when they owe you something, do you happen to have a lawyer as a freelancer?
I don't have a personal lawyer that I've ever had to tag, but I have friends who are lawyers. So it's always good to know one that could be in your corner if you need them to, but I don't have somebody like on retainer. I don't run into any like real legal problems. I've had to chase people down for money, but that's basically it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, the next thing I want to talk about is organization and project management. And we'll kind of go through this kind of fast. Number one is keep your personal and professional emails separate, always. It's better for your organization, and it's also just more professional to have a real email from your .com rather than like angelbaby89@hotmail.com. You don't want to do that. So just have a professional email account. Next is keep a weekly planner because your week changes all the time. You don't know what jobs are coming in. I have a huge desk book that I have, and I sit down on a Sunday night and I think about my week and what I have coming up. I put all the hard dates in, and then I time block around that, like all my meetings and all that kind of stuff. And then I keep a rolling to-do list on the side. and put the most important things at the top, check them off, and then whatever I don't do goes in the next day. And you just keep filling it out through the week, but always sit down like a Sunday night. You don't want to go into a Monday morning not knowing what you're going to end up doing that day. Your day is just going to get away from you. So I recommend keeping a weekly planner. Next is organizing your files. I yell at my students about this all the time. Folders are your friends. I have a new year folder for every year of freelance, and then I have folders for every project that's in it. And then I have consistent file naming. So like example, like I name it with the year. So like 2021, and then the date January 26th, creatively freelancing sketches .psd, and then I'll go into freelancing version 1, version 2. You want to know like which one's the final version, all this stuff. And also it's easy for your clients to know what you're working on and for them to manage all the files that they get in all day. So it's just very important, easy to search and find stuff. It's just it makes your life easier. Just get organized. I recommend it. Next is project management tools that I use. I use Trello and Excel for project deadlines, progress, and invoicing. I use Dropbox and Google Drive for easy access to all my files and seamless file sharing. Dropbox is my go-to. I pay for it. It's worth it because if your computer crashes or your hard drive gets dropped in water, I don't know what's going to happen, but any of that happens, you still have all of your work on Dropbox. Highly recommend it. And also Dropbox makes sharing any like folders or files with your clients so easy. So I'm just going to show you really quick like what Trello looks like to me. Trello board is just very visual. So I'm a very visual person. I work on illustrations. It's really easy for me. You can label things. I set it up as kind of like a to-do list. So I have the things I wanted that I'm about to do or going to do or coming up, the things that I'm actually working on, the things that are done. And then once it's done, I know to invoice it, and then I move it over to the invoice category. And then once it's paid, I put it under the month that it's paid. And everything is, you can even add like details in the cards. It's great. So I highly recommend Trello. The other thing I do for invoicing and just keeping a very good list and just keeping track of my clients in general are like keeping a Google Sheet of the date, the client, the email. So you have all the contact information there, what job it was, how much money got paid, when you invoiced, when it was paid, and if there's like a URL for like where it is. So it's easy access. So say you're going to update your website. You're like, oh, I did that job for so-and-so. You can just look at it, grab the URL, go put it up on your website. So that's another helpful one. Taxes. Do we have any questions before I move on to this?
No, I think you can keep going, and we will round them out at the end.
Okay, great. So taxes are not something I love to talk about. They're not something I love to do, but they're a necessary part of this job. The first thing you should know is that they're quarterly estimated taxes. So if you don't file quarterly, you will get fines. And I have been that person and gotten those fines. I literally did that last year. So you learn from your lessons, your mistakes, I mean. So here are the dates, like April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. That's when you file your taxes. And you just kind of pile on all, like put together all the jobs that you did within those months and take away 30% of each job. And that's your estimate tax. And it's going to be higher than what it actually was, but you'll get money back at the end of the year. Again, like I said, set aside roughly 30% of each check. Taxes differ everywhere, but I usually put away 30% in a separate bank account, so I don't touch it. Again, bad with money, so you need to I have to put in precautions for myself. I recommend putting a separate bank account for just your tax money. Then there's expensing work-related purchases. We just went over that. A lot of things you can expense, and you could talk to your accountant about it. Use accounting software like QuickBooks or FreshBooks. Get a separate credit card for work. So everything that you buy, like any supplies for your studio or whatever you're buying, any meetings with clients, you can put it all on the same credit card. It'll all be in the same place, and you don't have to worry about searching for all this stuff. And pay it off every month, by the way. Don't just leave it there. The other thing is get an accountant or a bookkeeper if you can afford it. I have an accountant. Everybody should have an accountant. Don't do TurboTax. You're going to end up owing so much more money and just stressing yourself out. Any tax related questions?
We actually had a question about starting an LLC. At what point do you think you'll need to do that or get incorporated?
I think it's tricky. I just did it and my accountant did it for me. So I literally have no idea what happened. He just said, it would be better for you tax wise if you were an LLC. And I said, cool, can you do it? And he said, yeah. So that's all I know. And that's why I'm going to double down on getting an accountant because I would have never done that. And I actually technically did not do it. He did it. And I don't know any of the information about it. So I recommend getting an accountant and sitting down and talking to them and discussing the LLC. But that is, you do get a tax break for being an LLC. I do know that.
Another question we received is, do we have to do all of this even if we are just moonlighting?
Yes. But on a much smaller scale. And when I was moonlighting, I didn't worry about the taxes as much because I opted in to put more taxes away at my full-time job. So it kind of balanced out a little bit. But that was when I was at the Society of Illustrators. When I started making more money, that's when I had to start putting it away. So you definitely want to try to put the taxes away for that. I would recommend it so you don't end up owing a bunch of money at the end. But most of the time, like you don't have to hustle as hard for this kind of stuff. And you're going to have to do, you're going to have to file your 1099s along with your W-2 from your full-time job and all this kind of stuff. You might not necessarily need an accountant for that. I was doing TurboTax when I was working full-time and doing this, but I always recommend getting an accountant because they're going to help you and save money. So for sure.
Great.
Did that help?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for that?
No, you can keep going and we'll save the rest for the end.
Okay, great. So this is my last one. And it's just some tips on how to avoid burnout and stay motivated. I definitely, especially during this time, past year, it's been really hard. And I found some things that really helped me. So I figured I'd share those with you guys. So the first thing is setting boundaries. Boundaries are so important, especially for yourself and for other people. So you want to set some boundaries by creating office hours. Have like legit office hours so you feel like you're going to work. And even if you don't have a project like on your table at that moment, there's other stuff you can do. Like you can catch up on your invoicing. You could do some social media campaign, or you can do some marketing, or you can work on personal work, which always leads to better places. So I recommend doing that. Make time for things like that in your day. Next is don't respond to emails after 7 p.m. And I just broke this rule last night, but it was a client that I love working with. But try not to even look at your email after 7 p.m. because most of the time, anything that comes in after 7 p.m. can wait until the next day. Kind of disconnect from that. The other one is don't take on too much work. Know when to say no. It's great when you're really busy and you constantly have people coming in and you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to take everything because I don't know if I'm going to get another job like next month or next week or whatever. Don't stress yourself out. That'll affect your work, the quality of your work. It might affect your deadlines and it might affect your health. So just know when to say no. The other thing is limit favors for friends. I feel like, especially when you're a creative person, you're probably like the token creative person in their like friend group. And so every time they have like a fun idea or a gift for somebody, like they want a portrait for somebody or a portrait of someone's dog, I don't know, all these things, they want a logo for their business. They'll always hit you up, right? Happens to me all the time. And I have trouble saying no to people. And then I have these projects that I'm either not getting paid for or not getting paid very much for looming over my head on top of all my deadlines. And like the last thing you want to do after work is work some more. So just know how to say no politely to your friends. And if you don't want to say no, know how to charge for your time. The next one is invest in yourself. It's important. Take classes, lectures, workshops. They don't even have to do with anything that you actually do. Just do something new, learn something new. You never know where it's going to lead. Like personally, I'm taking pottery classes. I do classes. Like I've been watching these Creatively classes. I signed up for Creative Live, which is a bunch of classes you can sign up for that are cool, and they're not all illustration. They're just random. And the other thing, investing in yourself, is doing personal work. Like I said before, personal work will lead to experimentation and growing as an artist, whichever field you're in. It doesn't matter. And it'll help you personally. Like it will actually make you happier to do stuff that you really love to do that's not a job. So always factor that into your week. Exercise, eat well, get sleep. You want to stay healthy. If you're not healthy and you're staying up all night, doing all-nighters, you're not going to do a good job and you're going to be exhausted, and it's just not worth it at that point. And then also know when to disconnect. Know when to shut off your phone or your computer, be done for the day, or like get up and take a walk and just step away from your computer for a minute. That's how you get ideas and you kind of take a break and refresh yourself. Another thing I would recommend is cultivating a community of creatives. So it helps with accountability, helps with solidarity, and it helps to stave away like the solitude of being a freelancer. So you could, join some industry specific organizations like the Society of Illustrators or the Art Directors Club or Professional Photographers of America or whatever it is. And you can meet people at those places. They do a lot of online meet and greets now. There's a thing called Creative Mornings where people do like this kind of these open talks and stuff like that. And then lastly, what I would recommend is taking control of your environment. Surround yourself in your studio or whatever with things that make you happy. Like it's your place where you're going to spend every day, where you want to feel inspired and creative. So just put up stuff that makes you happy, things that inspire you. Fill it with plants. I don't know, whatever makes you happy, just do it. And the other thing is try to change up your environment once in a while, whether it's like, I don't know, going and working at a co-working space or going to work at a coffee shop or going on vacation and working from there. I don't know, just try to switch it up so you don't get bored, and so you can inspire yourself a little bit more by stepping away from the studio. But that's basically it. Then we're going to do a quick Q&A, so I can take all your questions, and hopefully I covered as much as I possibly could within this hour.
Tara, it was amazing. Thank you so much. There was so much information here that I think everyone will be so appreciative of. I'll do a couple questions since we're short on time. A common question that we received was, do you or have you ever worked with an agent? And do you see value in having someone like that find projects or clients for you? Or do you think that's just someone you have to answer and pay to?
I don't have an agent. I worked with one briefly when I was first starting, but it didn't do anything for me. I think there's a time and a place to work with an agent, depending on what you do for a living. So for me, I am an editorial illustrator and I have a ton of clients, and it's easy to like reach out to these kind of people, and I can do it on my own. So I don't recommend, also editorial doesn't pay a whole ton a lot. So I wouldn't recommend getting somebody in who's going to try to get you editorial jobs when you already have them coming in, and then they're going to take 25% of that. But if, say, you wanted to start getting bigger jobs like advertising jobs, book deals and stuff like that, then I would say go get an agent, because they're going to get you high paying jobs, and they're definitely going to take a cut, but it's worth it. So, and those are the jobs it's hard to get without an agent, and they'll do all the negotiating for you. So it's really case by case.
Amazing. Another question that we received is from Amrita, and they asked, how do you deal with comparing yourself and your work of others?
I try not to do it. It's impossible to not do it, but I honestly, and this is probably not the best way to do it, I stay off of social media as much as possible. But I also just kind of remind myself that they're their own person, they're on their own journey, and I am doing my best and I am doing the things that I love, and I just need to remind myself of that. I think it's just kind of a constant internal battle that a lot of creative people have, and it's something that you just kind of constantly have to reassure yourself about.
Amazing. And our last question is one that we've also received a few hits on. And I will go ahead and put live Stacy's iteration of the question. She asks, with respect to displaying work on social media, do you have any tips for protecting your work? For example, a watermark or anything like that?
No. I don't know. I'm not great in this area. I would say I never put watermarks on anything I do. The few times that I did, it was when I was working at Gawker, but it was for Gawker, for Jezebel, and we would put the labels at the bottom. But that was like a place where like millions of people were seeing stuff, so we didn't want them to grab it off the website and take it and do what they wanted with it. But I think on social media, it's a little harder to stop people from sharing your work. There are times where I've had people like take my work and put it on their Instagram, not give me credit and stuff like that. But then usually somebody sees it and says, "Oh, Tara Jacoby is the artist for this." There are things like that you have to watch out for on social media. But as for watermarks, I've never really done them. I don't see the harm in doing them, depending on what you're doing, especially if it's photography. You could sign your work. There's definitely ways around it. I'm not the best person to ask.
All right, I think that's it, Tara. Thank you so much for such an insightful class, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming and watching everything. I hope I helped at least a little bit.
And Tara, do you want to share how people can find you? I know we had some people ask about where they can see your work and buy prints and so forth.
Yeah, tarajacoby.com is my website. And I have a lot of new stuff on my Instagram, which is just at Tara Jacoby. And honestly, feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm usually like pretty good at email. Like within a week, I'll get back to you, depending on how many deadlines I have. But I'm always open to give advice to people. So definitely reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.